Good evening. The time is now 6 p.m. on Monday, March 11th, 2024. I call the Lexington Select Board to order. This meeting is being conducted in a hybrid format via the application Zoom, allowing remote public participation. All members of the board are present in person. Members of the public can view and participate in the meeting from their device by clicking on the link provided in the meeting agenda. Please note that this meeting is being recorded. Further, this evening's meeting is being broadcast live and archived by Lex Media for future on-demand viewing. All supporting materials that have been provided to members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. This meeting begins with an executive session, so I'll take that out of order and then come back to the introduction of the board members when the public is introduced back into the room. So our first item of business is to consider the purchase of a property by the Lexington Housing Assistance Board, LexHab, for affordable housing. Any purchase of property by LexHab requires the approval of the Select Board. I move that the Select Board go into executive session under Exemption 6 to consider the purchase of real property and to reconvene in open session. Further, as chair, I declare that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the town.
Second.
Been moved and seconded by a roll call. Ms. Hay?
Yes.
Ms. Barry?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Mr. Lucente?
Yes.
And Mr. Sandin?
Yes.
We are now in executive session and we will reconvene in a little bit. So the board will disconnect from this Zoom session, go to our executive session, and then return to this Zoom session. It is now 6:33 p.m. and we are coming out of recess. We had started this meeting at 6 p.m. with an executive session and then are continuing the public portion of the meeting at this point. Members of the board are in person tonight, and I'm Joe Pato, the board chair. Sitting on my right is Vice Chair Susie Barry, and on her right is Jill Hay. Sitting on my left is Doug Lucente, and on his left is Mark Sandin. Joining us from staff is Jim Malloy, town manager, and Kelly Axtell, deputy town manager. Also joining us remotely is Kim Katzenbach, the select board executive clerk. Tonight's meeting is a regular session of the board, and we will be taking general public comment. Before I start the open public comment section of our meeting, I would like to remind all participants that we are neighbors and we are working together in the best interests of our community. I ask that all comments be made with civility and respect and without casting aspersions or reference to motives. Open public comments are for items not otherwise covered on our agenda. Comments are allowed for up to 10 minutes. Each speaker is limited to 2 minutes. Members of the board will neither comment nor respond other than to ask clarifying questions. Remote attendees who have dialed in by telephone should press *9 to be recognized or click on the raise hand button in the Zoom application. If you are in the room, please line up at the microphone to be recognized. When you are recognized to speak, please state your name, address, and any relevant board or committee affiliation. Tonight, I will be using the Zoom timer display the remaining time for a speaker. This is a 2-minute countdown clock, and when the timer reaches 0, I will interrupt and allow the speaker only to finish their sentence. Is there anyone who wishes to make a comment about an item that is not covered elsewhere on tonight's agenda? This includes allowing comments on consent agenda. And I see someone in the room. And we'll recognize the speaker in the room.
Dawn McKenna, 9 Hancock Street. And as I mentioned, I have a comment about an item on the consent agenda, which I think you just said is okay for me to do. Great. So I'm wondering if the board would consider removing the February 12th minutes from the consent agenda. And I went through those and I understand how difficult it is to create minutes, having done many myself. But I don't think all of the information that should be in there related to the comments that my husband and I made at that February 12th meeting are in there. The quote that I read from the Secretary of the Interior Standards doesn't have quotes around it, and I want to make sure that's quoted. But specifically, it says nothing about some of the individual comments that were made and my concern about how the board had said that they were going to address the concerns. So I'm wondering if the board would allow that to be removed so that I can work with the selectman's office and Mr. Tatte to make some corrections and bring them back to the next meeting.
Thank you for your comments. We will now proceed with the meeting. I see no one else standing. And Ms. McKenna, we won't address it now, but we will address it when we get to the consent agenda. All right. I'm not seeing anybody else standing or hand raised. So we will now move to select board announcements and liaison reports. Colleagues, tonight we have no written comments in our packet. Are there any comments or announcements that members would like to make verbally? Ms. Hay.
Just very briefly, the Transportation Advisory Committee is meeting simultaneously with us. But one of the items that they are discussing tonight is the data to date on Lexpress sales. The passes since we changed to the $20 unlimited, and I know we were very hopeful that that would have an impact. The goal to beat was 285 passes and tickets. That was the goal to beat, and we actually have sold 644 total passes, and the age split between seniors, youth, and general is almost exactly a third. And one is 30%, 33%, and 36.5%. So I think this, I'm very encouraged by this. And as I said, TAC is discussing it now, but I wanted to share with the board that information is new news.
Thank you, Ms. Hay. Timely. Ms. Barry?
Thank you, Mr. Tatte. Just a reminder to everyone that on Wednesday night at 5:30, there will be a community meeting in Estabrook Hall in the Cary Memorial Building. The Lex 250 Commission has been exploring the possibility of installing a permanent memorial in recognition of the 250th anniversary of the Battle of Lexington. We have an anonymous donor that came forward with a significant amount of money towards that endeavor. We did conduct what wound up being an international call to artists. We had 35 people apply. We are down to 4 semi-finalists. And so the unveiling of those 4 final concepts will be this Wednesday evening, the 13th, 5:30 p.m. in Estabrook Hall. There also is a Zoom link that should be available on the town website. So we hope a lot of people will tune in for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Barry. Any other comments tonight? Great. And I will encourage us all to make these in writing as much as possible. Mr. Malloy, do you have a town manager's report this evening?
I do indeed. So I have a couple of things. The first item is just an update because I know a lot of people like to follow our subsidized housing inventory. We are now reporting that we went up by 13 additional affordable housing units from, we're now up to 1,354 out of 12,252 housing units in town, which is 11.5%, which is important, as we all know, because it keeps us over 10%. The second item I just want to point out, I hope you had a chance to read the PM article that was in my update. I didn't quite make the cover of Rolling Stone, but I made the cover of Public Management Magazine, so that was pretty exciting for me. And that our fiscal year 25, chapter 90 funds came in at just under $965,000. And we're getting very close to having an easement with this common. They had just today gave me back some very minor comments from their insurance company. And so tomorrow I'll be talking to Kelly to have our insurance company review it, make sure there's no issues. And with that, I have one other announcement. As a matter of fact, here, may mind handing those down. The original goes to Mr. Tatte. After 37 years as a town, county, and village manager, I've decided to retire from the town of Lexington at the end of my current term, which is September 30th, 2024. Appreciate the time that I've worked for the town of Lexington and believe we've accomplished a lot over the past 6 years. Lexington is fortunate to have an excellent staff that is truly dedicated to providing the highest level of services to the community possible. I provided Joe Paddo as the chair a schedule to assist the board in going through a recruitment process. It's my sincere hope that by giving a 6-month notice that the select board will not need to hire an interim town manager and that we can have an orderly planned transition that goes smoothly for the town and all of our town staff. I'm happy to provide any assistance or advice during this process that the board requires. I'd like to thank the board, and I would like to wish you all the best in the town's future endeavors.
Thank you, Mr. Malloy. And I just want to take this opportunity to thank you for your service and for your exemplary career. The board is looking to put together a retirement event for you later. So we're going to spend more time talking about what you have done for us and for others, for us, especially during these difficult years of the pandemic and other challenging issues that have come and are continuing to come. And I want to thank you for your 6-month notice so that we have the ability to actively recruit for a new town manager. That will put some new work on the board, and after I will come back to that in a moment because I'm going to reassign a few tasks. Because one of the things the board is going to be doing is creating a search committee and looking for a new applicants. But Mr. Malloy, it really is very helpful for us to have had this time, and I look forward to these next 6 months in working closely with you as we finish out your exemplary career.
Thank you.
And I believe board members are going to speak in more detail later, but Ms. Barry, I think, wanted to speak to you, and as I recall, you were the chair when we hired Mr. Malloy.
I was. I recall that. On the one hand, 6 years ago seems like a long time ago because we've certainly been through a lot. But it also seems like yesterday that you sat right there and we made our decision. And before you got home, your wife knew, I believe, is what you told us. So, yeah. So anyway, and that's kind of what I want to talk about with you. Because from the beginning, we've talked a lot about balance and family and those that support you in this work. Because part of what your article was in your non-Rolling Stone, yet very prestigious magazine, was about how to get the support you need when you're in public government and a public facing job in very difficult times. In 37 years, I'm sure you have seen pretty much everything, yet I think we did surprise you with a few things you had never seen in your time here, because we're Lexington and we have to be unique. So on our behalf, if you would please thank Kay and Brian and Pete and Christina, because the family unit is truly what gets you through the good times and the bad. And they're the ones that understand when you miss a dinner or you miss a birthday or you miss an anniversary or you're late for something, but they're the ones who recharge you. And so a very special thank you to them for all that they have done behind the scenes for you and with you. And as Joe said, we will talk more about this later, but thank you very much for your service, not only to Lexington, but to all the communities across the multiple places where you worked. They're all better for it, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mary. I think you expressed that very nicely. So colleagues, we're going to continue on. We are now at our consent agenda. We have 6 items on tonight's consent agenda. We've heard a request to remove an item. Does anybody wish to remove it?
There's nothing time sensitive about it, so if we remove it and just verify if there's any misstatements, I think that's appropriate.
That sounds fine. So we'll remove it entirely from tonight's agenda. So any other items? Seeing none, I move the consent agenda with the exception of item number 5 as it appears in the packet.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed say nay. None. It is unanimous 5-0. Brings us to the first item for individual consideration. And this is to discuss a request for a request RFP conditions for the 2024 annual town meeting, Article 33, which seeks to authorize the select board to seek affordable housing at a lot on North Street and Lowell Street. Colleagues, this is a board discussion for us to discuss what kinds of conditions we might be interested in. And I'd like to ask Mr. Sandine to sort of outline some suggestions that the Affordable Housing Trust Committee have provided for us. And I'll share a document that Ms. Tom shared just before our meeting, so I don't expect any of you had a chance to read it yet. So Mr. Sandin?
Thank you. So as the board is well aware, the Affordable Housing Trust has been conducting a number of public information sessions and community outreach sessions to neighbors, to precinct members, to town committees, to town commissions, to boards, in an attempt to understand what considerations we should be taking as we move forward with warrant article 33. And during that process, there have been a number of concerns and questions raised about this process, and some have suggested that it might make some sense for the select board to provide some indication of our intentions towards the RFP going forward. And so the Affordable Housing Trust, as I mentioned, has been having numerous public information sessions. And while we have heard from some folks that they felt that maybe hearing the same presentation 2 or 3 times was an indication that the trust was not listening as well as they would have liked, that we're really trying we're sorry that that's the perception, but that's really not the intention. The intention is to gather as much information and then provide feedback from those listening sessions in order to address those concerns. And so that's what happened today in the Affordable Housing Trust, is reflecting on all that public information session and to try to provide some recommendations to the select board about we might address some of those issues that have been brought up. And the first kind of question that comes from many people is, are we actually trying to develop 100% affordable housing, or are we trying to develop mixed market rate and affordable housing? And so the trust has recommended that the motion be changed in the warrant article to reference 100% affordable, and would suggest that, I don't think the select board has had a discussion about that yet. It would suggest that the select board also concur in that. They are also, the Affordable Housing Trust has felt that the 100% affordable should be a mixture of incomes ranging from 30% to 80%, with a 60% average area median income as from a qualification, and include a mix of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom apartments. One of the main things that we are hearing from neighbors is that they're concerned that the architecture may not reflect or be compatible with the existing architecture of their neighborhood. And I feel very strongly that the select board should be saying that that is something that we do want to do, that we are building something for our neighbors, and we are going to be considering what our neighbors are concerned about. And finally, there have been the Lexington Select Board, and all my time on the Lexington Select Board has always been one to be focused on reaching out as much as possible to the community. And so one of the things the Affordable Housing Trust is recommending that be included as a requirement in any RFP is that the selected developer actually has a track record of conducting those types of public information sessions, and that they agree to conduct at least 2 that reach out to some underheard and underserved communities, and use that as a way to refine the design that's proposed at the permitting process. So we can stop there. Those are the sort of things that the Affordable Housing Trust was referencing as must-haves. There's a whole number of other things that were mentioned as preferences, but maybe it's a reasonable thing just to stop there and talk about the process and these main requirements and see what the select board thinks.
Thank you, Mr. Sandin. And just one other thing I want to add to this list is that we've been hearing from some of the finance committees and some members of town meeting is a concern about what if the successful bid then pauses and doesn't do anything? Is there a way to enforce execution on the contract And I believe Mr. Malloy will be able to speak a little bit to that issue.
Yeah, so I did confirm with town council that we could, in the RFP itself, we could put a reversion clause in it where if the developer were to either, I'm not entirely sure if it's lease or sell at this point, but if the developer were to do either and not follow through with the development plans within the time frame set forth in the RFP, that the property could then revert back to the town's ownership or control.
Right, thank you, Mr. Malloy, because our intent is not for it to be idle, but actually to produce the kind of affordable housing we're looking for. So colleagues, Mr. Sandin has sort of laid out 3 major areas. The first one is to adjust the motion to be clear that it's 100% affordable, and that the intent would be for a mix of different income levels relative to the area median income. Are there any comments on that request? Ms. Barry has a process question.
Thank you, Mr. Tatte. So Article 33 is coming to annual town meeting, and assuming it receives the necessary 2/3 vote, at what time does the RFP process, like what's the timeline?
My feeling on that would be up to the select board.
Mr. Tatte?
So I think the motion would be to give the select board the power to do this. So it is for us to initiate that. I would be, speaking only for myself, looking for staff to put together an RFP in a timely fashion. But it would have to come to us to sort of set the parameters for what that RFP would look like, which is something we have done before in other contexts. And I think Ms. Hay might have a comment.
Thank you. Yes. In fact, in response to some of the questions we've gotten, I reached out within the Magic community, and I have gotten a couple of responses from other community planning directors who have done this not that long ago, also for 100% affordable projects. And I have their RFPs, their Q&As, different documentations. And I'm sure Ms. Kowalski has plenty of information as well. So we do have some starting pieces. And I know actually Ms. Tung and Ms. Prosnitz have also gathered some as well. So we have plenty of models from which we could start.
And if I can just follow up on that, yes, thank you. The Affordable Housing Trust is, the recommendations made today come primarily from other successful RFPs that have been made by other Massachusetts municipalities for doing this type of development.
Okay. And then just a few more process questions, because there could be people who are joining this conversation midway, and it keeps changing anyway. So RFP stands for Request for Proposal. So Mr. Malloy, can you explain what a request for proposal is and what it does mean for the town and what it doesn't mean for the town?
So a request for proposal is a advertisement seeking proposals for a specific item. The town can put all of the conditions that it wishes into an RFP that it chooses, the timeline that it's open, and the evaluation criteria can all be included in an RFP. Generally, in RFP, you go with the highest and best bidder. There are also RFQs where you go with a qualitative request for qualifications. You use mostly for like architects and engineers. So it's a little bit different. You go with qualifications, but you can put all of the criteria in that you want and how you would actually rank any proposals that you receive, similar to what we did when we were looking for properties for the Hosmer House when we're looking for a new home for it.
And then the bidder is bound by the RFP if they're successful, or is there then a successor contract that they're bound by?
They are legally bound to a point with what they submit for the RFP. Usually you put up a bond with an RFP, and if somebody does not execute the RFP, then you go to the next bidder on your list, and the bonded individual who didn't complete the RFP then their bonding company will pay the difference between one bid and another bid. But there's usually in an RFP is an actual contract that they would be required to sign, and we generally include the contract in the RFP document so that there's no negotiations after the point. It's like, this is the RFP you proposed on, and it included the contract that you proposed you would sign. And so that way there's no gray areas afterwards.
That's the point I was getting to, that it's all in there together. It's not, you go to RFP and then we do a contract later, so something could get dropped or changed. Okay,
Correct.
thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Barry. Mr. Sandin and then Mr. Vicente.
Just to follow up, I'm very appreciative of Ms. Barry's bringing up the process. One of the questions that we get often when people ask about the RFP is the town obligated to accept proposals that come in under the RFP?
And that answer is no. The board could reject all RFPs. You always reserve and retain that right.
Thank you.
Thank you. So just for us to work our way through, the first, I'm going to go down a second, sorry, but I do want to make sure that we address these items. The first one we'll come back to is the question of 100% affordable in the motion. Mr. Vicente.
So I think what Mr. Sandin laid out, which is the recommendation from the Affordable Housing Trust, was, for concepts that I think really have alignment with what we've been trying to do. 100% affordable units, 60% AMI for mix of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom apartments. And AMI is area median income for anyone that doesn't know. Having it compatible with the architecture of the neighborhood, yes. And then 100% for Lexington is the, needing that public facing communication with the community, because that's important here. I think just stepping back on the project as a whole, we have talked about this at this table a number of times. And while any project may not be perfect, I think this is a good project. I think it meets the goals that we've been trying to achieve for a very long time as a board on affordable housing. And this puts a project in the queue that we have really not put a ton of affordable housing projects in the queue over my 6 years on this board. And in fact, when I joined this board, we were talking about 7 years ago, excuse me, we were talking about the Vine Street project, which has had very little progress other than designs were put together. So we haven't made significant progress in this area, and we keep hearing from residents and members of our community that we need more affordable units, and the wait lists on all these units is quite large. So I think us doing this is an important step. I'm hopeful that town meeting will also see the value in doing this. And I know that, like everything, the devil's in the details, but this is also one of those points where we're looking for RFPs. We're trying to get details so that we can make a good project happen. I was lucky to go to a Mass Municipal Association meeting on affordable housing developments and how complex they are and how many people are involved. And for the 3 projects that they had highlighted at this meeting, it took years. I mean, we're talking 8 years timeframe for these development projects actually come together. And I think in one of them, they had 20 different funding sources to make the project happen. We have goals. The only way we're going to get to any of our goals is to put things into the queue. And I think this is a really good step in the right direction. I know there's been a ton of back and forth and feedback from folks on wrong location and too dense traffic, etc. I think this is actually a good spot. I mean, looking at all the available spots in town, there aren't many. We don't have a lot of options in which to do a project like this. So I hope the rest of the community can see the value in that and help us move this forward. And I know we're going to talk about more specifics in a moment, but I agree with all the 4 objectives that Mr. Sandin laid out.
Thank you, Mr. Vicente. Helpful for that clarification. Just 2 quick comments. You referred to this as this project, and I want to caution all observers that this is the initiation of a project. There is no project yet. The intent here is for us to be able to solicit proposals for a project. so that we can evaluate what would fit. And the other comment I want to make is you referred to the Vine Street project. When I was elected to this board in 2013, that project was at our table, and it is yet to move anywhere. So these are not easy things to make go forward. Ms. Hay.
Thank you. So I want to echo pretty much everything Mr. Vicente just said. And I just wanted to add by way of a little bit of information, in the case of the Hudson All Affordable Project, which is quite similar in many ways to this, if you start the clock after the town meeting vote and after the board drafted the RFP, and you just go from the RFP due date, which was March 31st, 2021, that project is under construction now. So just to give you, color on that comment about how long the process sometimes takes. And then the only other thing I wanted to add in response to some of the other things that we are hearing that the community concerns, this is something that we are looking to do now. That does not mean that we will not continue to look at other opportunities, and it does not mean that we will put anything else on the shelf. So we will continue to evaluate, including the things that came through the center study. All of those things that exist still exist. This is not to the exclusion of anything else. I just wanted to kind of clarify for all of us.
And Ms. Hay, could you just confirm whether or not you agree with the...
Oh, and I do.
Thank you. And for anybody curious, I do as well. Ms. Barry?
Mary.
Okay. Just clarifying.
I wasn't confused.
She's a little tired. Anyway, yes, I'm just going to say yes. And I've sat at this table in various chairs and consistently say at least once a year, we have talked this talk long enough. It is time to walk the walk. I agree with these 4 points that are being brought forward. I agree with Ms. Hay that we do need to continue to evaluate other sites. If this board and the community is truly going to be, committed to affordable housing, we need to move this process forward. And it is a process, and it will take time. And that's why I was asking about how soon would this start to roll? Because I was hoping that the vote that we were going to, that we will ultimately take at town meeting didn't mean there's a vote and then this pause until the next thing. So it's encouraging to know that there should be some pretty quick forward movement if the vote is successful at town meeting, and I certainly hope it will be. So yes.
Thank you, Ms. Barry. And I do want to also make sure that everyone is aware that while we're looking to have this start the train, it is a continuing public process. And the final decision to move forward will again be a public process at this board. There isn't anything that once it begins, it has to complete the way it was initially thought of. We will learn, and we will learn through public engagement. Mr. Sandy, since you proposed these conditions, I hope you are in favor.
Yes.
So I think that was unanimous. They were all 5 supportive. Other comments? Mr. Sandin.
So thank you very much to the board for your support of those recommendations. The Affordable Housing Trust had 2 other main topics to consider in the letter that was sent to the board today. The other one about the second part about RFPs was preferences. So any RFP has requirements, and then any RFP has preferences where we indicate that these are things that are aligned with the town's values and would be weighted highly on any proposal, but are not necessarily requirements in order to move forward. And so there's a number of things that we've heard from the community about sensitivity to neighborhood and adjacent properties. And one of the things that we've heard is folks are concerned about, would we be building just one big unit? And a number of the RFPs that we've seen have preferences in them to say that we would like to see multiple smaller buildings rather than one large building. A number of the proposals we've seen have limited building heights to the current zoning, which in Lexington's case right now in our zoning is 2.5 stories. And the other thing that, of course, when one of I couldn't not say this in my seat here, but we ought to be doing our buildings in a sustainable fashion. And so, well, we've confirmed with the town manager that the town's integrated building design and construction policy, a developer would not be required to comply with that under our current policy, but would make a preference that we would be showing to developers that we have a preference for people that are complying with these things. And in this case, it probably means maximizing solar on site and some other indoor health items. Our Commission on Disability has recommended that building types be universally accessible. We have from our affordable housing trust member who lives in affordable housing that there's really importance to have on-site storage for residents and on-site laundry for residents and appropriate trash and recycling receptacles. So those are all preferences. I would like to hear from the board on those. These types of preferences seem reasonable to consider.
Colleagues, I'll just voice that my answer for me is yes, these are reasonable preferences. There are some other guarantees, like you talked about the integrated building design process, but we've also adopted local bylaws and zoning bylaws and adoption of the what I used to call the opt-in stretch code, which will, from an energy perspective, require these to be highly efficient buildings that are fossil fuel free.
Correct.
But in addition to that, there are other things that we do for our own buildings that would be desirable. Colleagues, any other comments on what Mr. Sandin has suggested as preference? Mr. Lucente.
So I think that the number one sort of idea in this is the number of units, yes. Right? So laying out the 40 units as a approximately, I think anything much lower than that, what I've heard in conversations is that it becomes unpractical for a project to go forward because it's not enough units to get, the numbers to work. So I think for 100% affordable development, that I think that number sort of needs to be important, that we stick to a number that people can rely on and that we're all using for conversation purposes, because it does end up impacting discussions about traffic and scale and scope and all of that. That's really the number one thing. I'm comfortable with 40. I think if we try to go too much lower, we will find ourselves not getting any responses to an RFP. So I think that maybe that's the right number. As far as the aesthetics, I'm good with all the things that were written. The 2.5 stories I do think will help fit the proposal or the concepts into the neighborhood. And obviously we want handicap accessibility, universal accessibility, and sustainable building goals is also very important to our community. So I think this is a good list. I do also want to thank the Affordable Housing Trust members and especially Ms. Tung for all the work and effort that's gone into this and looking at so many other projects that have been developed that she and others on the committee, including yourself, Mr. Sandin, have been able to put this very good list together. So I appreciate that. It really gives us a head heads up on it and a step in the right direction to get an RFP. If this does pass through town meeting, which I hope it does, this will get us even that much further in the process when it comes to that time. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vicente. Ms. Hay?
I was going to say I'm supportive of this list, absolutely. And I just want to make sure that we are clear that this is a non-exclusive list. There may be other things that we add as we go to refine, but these are sort of baseline things that we recommend.
Right, I think they're illustrative and already capture elements of what we believe the community is looking for. And I didn't mention the number, Mr. Vicente, you did. For me, I'm willing to consider proposals in a range. I expect that the developers who would respond to an RFP are going to have a number that is their minimum. And personally, I have a number which is a minimum for if we were to only put, let's say, pick a ridiculous number, 5 units on this lot, that would be a woefully inadequate utilization of the property. We don't have very many properties we can use, so we do need to make sure that what we do here actually yields a reasonable amount of housing. Exactly what that number is, I think, really depends on what the proposals come back at. And you know, a proposal might have a larger number of units, but be otherwise untenable for the lot as we look at it. So I don't want to lock us into a particular number, but I do want to make sure that we don't accept proposals below a certain amount. Ms. Barry.
So I'm going to support what Mr. Pato just said. Kind of as proposals, I'm fine with them. I don't want to see us, you know, tie the hands of this board or future boards or future decisions. We are, again, just starting the train, just starting the process. So I think we need to see what comes back from the RFP. So that's where I get a little queasy about starting to put numbers down. Because as we all know, there was a number that came out a while ago that I don't think that number is possible, but I don't know, I'm not a builder. And then people just focus on the number and lose track of what we're truly trying to do here, which is to provide housing. So thank you.
Mr. Sandy.
Couldn't have said it better, Ms. Barry.
All right. We have 2 people online. I think there were some people in the room who might want to speak. Colleagues, do you have any other comments before I take some public comment? Seeing none. So anybody who would like to speak on this in the room, please line up at the microphone. And we have 2 people online. Let me stop sharing so I can see who they are. All right, the first person in the line is someone who's identified as Mark's iPhone 11. If you unmute your phone and please identify yourself by name and address, you will have 2 minutes before the timer expires.
Okay. Hello, everyone. This is Mark Lang. I live at 2OB Circle. I'm sure many of you have seen my emails bringing up points on this project. A couple of things I just want to highlight here. You know, I think many know that I'm a resident that lives very close to this neighborhood. And what I'm hearing a lot of tonight, and I've heard a lot of, is that we need affordable housing. We have to have affordable housing. It's time to get affordable housing. We need to maximize the number of units in affordable housing. But I'm not hearing anybody say, let's do some diligence on this property and figure out how many units will actually be supported by this site. We have a lot of people here who are not developers, who are not planners, that are saying, yes, 40 units, 50 units, 30 units. The truth is none of us here are experienced enough to know that without actually doing a study. And I'm just very disappointed that we're moving forward with something so quickly that, as some have said here, could take 6, 7, 8 years. And yet we want to rush to a vote without doing proper due diligence. And, you know, that's unfortunate. That's not really sort of the process that I'd like to be involved in. And I just wish that we would actually do some diligence on what the site can support rather than putting any number in the RFP. And I don't think we should do an RFP until we've actually done some work on this. I think everybody knows that the 3 properties that are town owned on Depot, Mass Ave, and Bedford Street, a study was done there. And we sort of we're afraid to do the study here because we're afraid what it will tell us. And then my final point here is we just did the MBTA zoning. And to build 40 or 50 units not near public transit is a huge mistake for Lexington that we'll live with for the next 100 years, okay? And so there are ample places for us to put this near MBTA, and to do this large is just really, really short-sighted. And my final thing is I have a question for the select board, which is once this passes, who besides the select board will have actual input on this, voting input on this going forward? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lang. Going to the next speaker, Mr. Scheipel.
Thank you, Tom Scheipel, 18 Finney Road. Just wanted to make a brief comment on the suggestion of limiting the height to 2.5 stories. Our most recent zoning, we've instead, I believe, have put the height limitation in feet at 40 feet, which is the same as the height limitation for single-family homes, but would allow 3-story buildings. The example is the special residential development. So I think to be, forward-looking and consistent with the way we're zoning now, I'd be uncomfortable with the 2.5 stories. Would rather see a 40-foot height limitation. If that, I just want to point out for the 475 Bedford Street parcel in the MBTA zoning, we were actually allowing 52 feet, all residential, basically 4 stories. So, in keeping going a little bit taller in the height, we would be minimizing the footprint, which would decrease the impervious surface. So that's another good reason to do it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I see nobody else online, nobody standing in the room. Mr. Lang posed the question of who else would be voting on this. The motion would provide authority to the select board. So the final decision-making would be at this table as part of a public process. Mr. Sandin.
But of course, there's a comprehensive permit that is required.
Absolutely right. That's the final decision to move forward. Funding agencies would have to give grants. The state would have to, through regulatory processes, have to approve. But from a municipal government organization that is moving the process and deciding to go forward, the final decision would be here. Any other comments, Ms. Hay?
So I would consider the small addition under the building design and aesthetics of building heights should be consistent with current zoning and or neighborhood. It's something, and I'm not going to try and wordsmith it now, but rather than putting in potentially the story limit, to put something in that is consistent with residential zoning. Again, I don't think we're voting language here. We're talking about concepts. And that is one that I think would be appropriate. So that.
Thank you. I think that probably is better than a specific, because the intent here really is to make it consistent with the zoning for adjacent.
Adjacent and permissible. So if it were somebody else developing on this site, what would they be allowed to build?
Right. Thank you. Seeing no other comments and nothing else from the board, Mr. Sandin, I think you've heard from the board our support for the article and for articulating the shape of what we would be looking to do moving forward. Mr. Sandin?
There's one other recommendation that the Affordable Housing Trust made, which is not related to RFP. And that is that there have been a number of people raising comments about traffic, transportation, walkability, and there's a recommendation from many of the folks that we've heard feedback from that the select board make its intentions clear about how they would in the future plan to address those types of things. And I don't think you can do it through an RFP, but maybe more in a meeting. So maybe that's a discussion we have at a later time about how we would think about those types of issues as well.
Right, and my understanding is that typically for a kind of development like this would potentially be, the planning board would be looking at a traffic study for the specific proposal that is coming forward. So colleagues, there is one other person online with their hand raised. Are you willing to take more comments?
Sure.
So online, there's someone identified as Jay. Can you unmute yourself?
Yeah, hi, this is Jay Luker, 26 Orange Avenue, Precinct 1, town meeting member. I just had a comment, I guess, about the process overall. And I'm in favor of Article 33 and going forward with this, but we're talking a lot about public input and the public process. And now we've actually even added, we're going to be adding to the RFP additional public input opportunities that the developer will be responsible for. But I haven't heard like us really define what are like the limits of what public input can accomplish, because I think there are a lot of people who do have concerns and they're voicing those concerns. But I think there's a perception maybe that public input can just be showing up and saying, I don't like this, don't do it. And obviously that's not valid public input, but we haven't really clearly drawn like what the limits are. What are the limits of what public input can accomplish and what can it not accomplish? And I think if we don't do that clearly, it's going to just I don't know, build animosity, continue to foster this sense that it's a steamroller process, that people aren't being listened to, and so forth. That's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Luker. Ms. Sparrow, did you want to have?
Yeah, I just had a comment to the last comments Mr. Sandin raised, and you raised that planning board would probably do a traffic study. I think it'd also be important for us to loop in engineering. The traffic light at Lowell and North was scheduled to be replaced in that intersection, I think kind of reconfigured, but that was delayed because of the Burlington MWRA project. So kind of loop them in and find out what else is going on in that corridor as that project is coming to a conclusion. But absolutely, we need to address all those issues over there.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. Ms. Berry's triggering another staff activity that's been on my mind, but I haven't mentioned lately, which is the transportation staff is attempting to get a grant to run transit from Waltham through up Lowell Street over to Burlington. And so perhaps we could, whenever we're having staff talk to us about these issues, they could talk about that. Great.
From Waltham?
From Waltham, yeah.
This is the one that I mentioned before, that it starts at the Waltham Transportation Center. It comes into Lexington, picks up Lexpress Route B, and then goes on and finishes out into Burlington. It's a tri-town transit grant.
And if we do get that grant, it could double the frequency of service on Lowell Street.
Not necessarily double. It replaces the Lexpress bus, which then could pick up a different route potentially to expand options within town.
Right. All of these are things to be discussed and explored later. I do just want to make one comment. Mr. Luker said that someone saying that they didn't like a project wasn't valid input. It is valid input, and it is something we consider. But this is balancing what we hear from the community broadly. And often it's the case that there's some member of the community who likes something and some member of the community who absolutely dislikes something. And we will not be able to satisfy the aspirations of 100% of the community, but our goal is to try to find something that meets the consensus and it hits the most categories that we're hearing from the public at large. And that is how public processes run for us. Seeing no other comments, I think we've come to an end. Mr. Sandine, you'll be presenting this for the board at town meeting.
Yes, plenty of material, it seems like.
Thank you. And the recording will be available. All right. So we're going to move on to item number 2, a little late on the agenda. This is an application for a common vittler's license for Tatte Holdings, LLC, doing business as Tatte Bakery and Café, 1777 Massachusetts Avenue. Excuse me. The select board is being asked to approve a request for this common vittler's license for the hours of 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. on Sunday through Saturday for seating a new cafe-style eating establishment. The applicant has worked with the Department of Public Health, the Building Department, and the Zoning Department for their respective required permits and inspections. The applicant, Mr. Daniel Brennan, and the on-site manager, Ms. Asma Lazuni, have been invited to the board to our meeting. And Ms. Patson, have
Mr.
you?
Brennan, Mr. Brennan is online, but I'm not sure about Anna.
Okay, so we do have Mr. Brennan. So,
yeah, I'm here.
Very good, thank you. So, colleagues, you've had the request and the drawings in your packet. Are there any questions you would like to pose?
How soon?
Yes. The comments behind the microphones were how soon and yes. Ms. Barry.
So, Mr. Brennan, welcome to Lexington. My entire family is familiar with your cafes, and it goes back to, actually, truth be told, we heard about them from my son and daughter-in-law who live in the DC area before we were aware of them up here. And with one coming to Lexington Center, there could be more visits for them to see their mother and mother-in-law. So well done, well done. But I just had a question. You had, I think it was page 3 of your presentation. You had some, it was the sidewalk. And so I just wanted to confirm with Mr. Malloy that approval to use the sidewalk is a separate process from what we're doing tonight. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And that would comply with the fee schedule that we approved a few meetings ago?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So welcome, and as Ms. Hay said, I'm not sure you heard it, is like how soon? No pressure.
Well, first off, I just want to say my name's Daniel Brennan. I handle permits for Tatte, but I don't work directly for them. I do have Brendan Boyle and Kevin Vargas on the line with store development. I believe our planned opening, I mean, we're hoping to get started, I think, as soon as this week. We have our building permit. So I think that will put us on track to open sometime mid-summer. So that's when we're planning to open. I believe if you could unmute Brendan Boyle or Kevin, maybe they could speak to it a bit more, but I believe that's when the opening is slated, mid-summer, I would say.
Hey everybody, this is Brendan Boyle, Vice President of Development with Tatte Bakery and Cafe. Thanks for hearing us tonight. And how soon? We are chomping at the bit. We're planning on getting rolling with construction on March the 18th. And if it goes smoothly, we should be open mid-August.
Outstanding. Colleagues, any other questions? I'm looking forward to the pastry. All right. Let's, I move that we approve a common vittler's license for Tatte Holdings, LLC, doing business as Tatte Bakery and Café, 1777 Massachusetts Avenue, for the hours of 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Sunday through Saturday.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say nay. None. It is unanimous, 5-0. Thank you, and the best of luck.
Thanks very much.
Moving now to item number 3, which is the Cary Memorial Library project construction documents on their way to the bidding phase for the children's room renovation, also known as CHIRP. Mr. Cronin is here with the architects. This board has seen presentations on where we are as we are trustees of the library as well. But this is a formal process for the board to let us move to the next step in our integrated design process. Mr. Cronin.
Thank you. You stole a little bit of my thunder. With me tonight is Stu Roberts from Johnson Roberts Associates. As you have seen a number of presentations, as per the integrated building design and construction policy, at the end of every phase, we like to bring the project back to the select board for approval in advancing this to the next phase. We would propose that we're at the end of the construction documents now, and we'd like to move into the bidding and construction phase, pending, of course, a positive affirmation from annual town meeting members. So with that, in the room with us, we also have Corin Stembridge, the Director of Library Services, in case we need some questions.
Okay, we have a slideshow, which this is a show you've seen before, and I won't go into the design too much because nothing has really changed as we've developed the construction documents. The goals are still the same. The design is still pretty much the same. So we can move forward. There is one thing that has changed on the outside of the building, and that's what I really wanted to highlight. As you can see, that's the existing plan. Next slide shows the new plan. I don't think there have been any changes to the plan since you saw it in design development. Some of the views, I think these may be the same views you saw last time. We've been working on them and updating them. A new, just more colorful, more lively, more open, I think much more engaging space for the library. Meeting room, of course, is still part of the project. Updating that so it can better serve the programs that the library currently runs and would like to run. Cooking cart is very, very important piece of this. So this is the one I wanted to focus on. I think this is a very positive development. Last time we were here, we talked about condensers on the outside of the building. As you know, as part of the process of replacing the entire mechanical system on the lower level with high efficiency heat pump system. So we need some new condensers. When we met with you before, we were planning to do a temporary location on the side of the building, and then at some point in the future, move it to a permanent location. We've done some work and we found that we can take the existing mechanical pit and make some modifications to it, and we can get the condensers in the existing pit below grade. So what we do, you can see the existing on the left. We're going to take that cover off of it and open it up so we can get airflow, put a grate over it, put a railing around the outside, and we can get all the condensers then in a permanent location, so you don't have to move them in the next phase, and they're still out of view. So I think that's very positive development. That's really the only design change that I think is worth mentioning. We can go one, let's see, next slide maybe. Yeah, sustainability goals are still the same, high efficiency mechanical systems. Let's see, the estimate numbers are a little hard for me to read from here, but basically the good news is the estimate has come down a little bit. The things that we worked on in the construction documents phase where we found some efficiencies in the mechanical system. We were able to reuse some of the existing ductwork, which has saved some money. We moved further along, so there's a little bit less inflation that we're putting on it. We need a little bit fewer contingencies so that we have a total construction cost down here, or total project cost of $6,271,800. And as I think you know, the library is committed to contributing $1.5 million. There was a previous appropriation of $100,000 for some of our initial design fees. And there was a previous appropriation for mechanical systems of $671,800. So that means that there's a balance of funding needed of $4 million at this point.
Very good. Thank you very much, colleagues. And I'm always happy to see when the numbers get smaller for what we need to lay out.
I have to say we worked hard on doing that. Project schedule, as you know, after town meeting, we would plan to go to bid in May, open bids in June. That means we're anticipating a construction start in July and anticipating a finish of construction in June of 2025.
Thank you. Mr. Lucente.
So I really like the idea of using the pit. I mean, this is great. It saves a lot of domino effect.
Yes.
What's going where and parking and all. It's really good.
Yes, it'll make the subsequent phase much easier if we don't have to move those.
That was my question too. On the next phase, this does help for that. So that's great to hear. My only question or comment is on the aesthetics. I never really loved the pit and the gate and it's fine, but now we're making it sort of bigger. Is there any way we could put some shrubs around or something else to give a little life or greenery to that area? I know there's a tree there and this picture was taken. Doesn't look like in high bloom season, but is there any way to, would that be maybe when we do a parking lot project there at some point in time? It just seems like there's a lot of gate and I know this looks at into the room. The look out from here is from the big large meeting room, correct?
Yes.
It's like a half window.
Yes, there's a half window up high that you look at. Although I don't think it'll really change the view out of that any, because all the equipment we have is down below where the windows would be. So probably doesn't really affect the interior view very much.
Okay. Anyway, I don't know if there was any. I can't tell if there's grass or anything around that.
We could take a look at that
area,
at the left-hand side area, if there was any kind of shrub line that we could in around the corner, taking that 90-degree. I think there's not a whole lot of room in between the fence and the sidewalk there.
Yeah.
It might be for the next phase. We'll kind of take a look and see if we have to change some of the walking paths.
Yes, and I do believe there's a row of trees that runs right along there too as well. So we'll have to take a look at that.
Yeah. Again, I think this is genius. The engineering piece of it is really good, and excited to see this move forward in this manner. Just didn't know if there's any way to preserve some green space, because the building is lovely and there's limited, especially in a big parking lot and limited green area. So I overall looks great. Thank you.
Ms. Shandin.
So I agree with Mr. Lucente's comments, but everything is trade-offs, right? And so one of the good trade-offs of this particular design that's being presented to us is we don't have mechanical equipment on the side of the library blowing noisy air out onto the sidewalks and looking at that equipment. So I think that the trade-off is an excellent trade-off, and really appreciate your help on making that occur. The only other thing when I'm thinking about when we're talking about fundraising and libraries is what are you doing on April 6th? Yes. I should instead of taking a cryptic reference, there's a library fundraiser on April 6th for this purpose.
Yes, and information is available on the library website. Ms. Hay.
Just so that we can be clear to anybody who's listening who hasn't listened to any of the 30 other iterations of this that we've heard, and since Ms. Stembridge is in the room, would you be willing to just reiterate for people when we're looking at this project schedule, assuming that this is in fact successful at town meeting, when will and where will the children's room services move?
Yes. Hi, Corin Stembridge, your library director. Yeah, the staff and I are in the process of planning all of this. If we are successful at town meeting, we anticipate that July 1 will begin the process of moving most of the children's collection up to the main level. We've done a fair amount of engineering, and we figure we can get somewhere in the neighborhood of 75% of our youth collection onto the main level, so that parents and kids looking for materials over the course of the construction project will have access to most of the collection. The rest of it will go off-site for the year along with some furniture. We will have youth services has, thanks to the town manager, been granted access to Estabrook Hall for children's programming. So we'll have ongoing children's programming happening in Estabrook Hall. All of our adult programs will move online, which is what we did during the pandemic. So we're fairly conversant in going into the virtual world for those. And we're really appreciative of many of our partners, such as the community center. Lex Farm will be partnering with us. So we will be doing programming for teens and adults and kids in different places around town to be determined.
Thank you, Stembridge. So colleagues, Ms. Barry, the chair of the library trustees.
Thank you, Mr. Powell. Mr. Roberts, it's good to see you. Pretty soon we'll be seeing you anymore. I don't take it personally, but I'm looking forward to that. So getting super excited as we're getting down to the wire. I just have a couple of questions here. So the condensers,
Yes.
Because they're kind of going to be in front of those windows. I know they're up high, but there are windows above them. Is there any sound impact from that would be heard in the large meeting room?
So there shouldn't be. So what you're looking at, there's actually a space. If you look at there's grass and there's a space underneath. So we're going to take the cover off of that, and there's a pit down below. So all the condensers are going down below grade, so you won't see them. So it'll be just like there's some equipment that's next to it in the area that's currently surrounded by a fence. So it'll all be low, and you see the windows that are there. Those are the windows going into the meeting room. Yeah. So all that new equipment is going to be down below that.
Above. The windows up above. But and neighbors won't hear it either.
I don't anticipate that they will. And I believe we're doing a little bit of acoustical treatment in there as well.
Okay, so. Great. And then just a couple of little bullet points that I just want to double check on. Technology in the large meeting room, that's all been resolved?
All been resolved. Yeah, we've had several meetings with the technology group, and we're replacing all the equipment that's in there, and we have a setup in the room so somebody can monitor what's going on for the AV systems.
Great. And then on your slide there, you talked about you are renovating the bathrooms and touchless fixtures, but since Mr. Cronin's sitting in the hot seat also, we did approve ARPA money for touchless fixtures, I believe, in all the bathrooms in the library. So just want to make sure those get done if they haven't been done. And then the last slide in the town meeting presentation, if that can get updated to just indicate the multiple funding sources.
Yes, it has been.
Excellent. Last time I looked, it didn't. And
yes.
I'm trying to anticipate someone saying it doesn't say it's coming from CPA funds and general funds.
Yep.
Okay.
It's all taken care of.
Great.
Did over the weekend.
Awesome. We are going to rock town meeting. Thank you.
Seeing no other comments, are there any comments from the public? Seeing none online or in the room, I will move to approve the design plans for the library renovation as attached and dated March 2024.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. None. It is unanimous, 5-0. Thank you very much.
And that indicates we were able to move forward into bidding.
You are able to move to the next phase.
Thank you.
Go team.
Very good. We are now at item number 4, which is to review a transportation safety group recommendation for amendment to section 192 traffic rules and orders. I believe we have Ms. Page.
She's now co-host.
Right.
Kim just made her co-host.
So Ms. Page, do you want to introduce this or did you want me to?
Whatever is your pleasure.
Yeah. Welcome to have you do it.
All right. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Sheila Page. I am the Assistant Planning Director. I'm also the coordinator of the Transportation Safety Group. And this past fall, we received a request to add a stop on Anthony at Lillian. The complaint was that drivers drive through, drivers heading, let's see, northwest on Anthony are rolling through, and drivers making a left onto Anthony from Lillian are cutting the corner. Now, when there's a T intersection like this, it's an implied stop. But it's not really working here. TSG went out and observed exactly what the neighbors were saying. So we are suggesting, and the neighbors requested this stop sign. So we're requesting the stop sign with the bar. The stop sign will help those drivers turning right to stop and look. It will help cars wanting to turn left from Anthony onto Lillian to kind of give them a chance to navigate the intersection safely. And then the stop bar, and we're proposing a teardrop, kind of a little teardrop shape with a short distance of double yellow lines to encourage drivers on Lillian making that left onto Anthony to do so properly. So TSG's request from the select board is to add this stop on Anthony in the traffic regulations.
Thank you, Ms. Page. Colleagues, any questions? This seems to me to be well needed. Ms. Barry?
Ms. Page, can we square that anymore to take the roundness out of it?
We could. These roads were recently paved, so we missed that opportunity to help square them off. We could paint them. We could paint like a white fog line to square them off a little bit better, and then I can talk to engineering and DPW to see when it might fit in the schedule. The pavement.
So I agree it's needed there, but I'm just going to say, given its location, given that stop sign is a stop sign, and people do rolling stops when it's easier to make the turn and when they don't think anybody's watching. So seriously, we can put the stop sign there. I'm not sure how much impact it's going to have. I support putting it there, but I think if we made that intersection a little bit more square, that could help as well, because then they're going to have to slow down or stop.
Yeah, we can check into that. I don't know offhand if there's any drainage facilities there, some catch basins or not. That will make it a little bit more difficult, but we can talk about that and figure out if we can do that, because that certainly will help.
Any other comments from the board? Mr. Lucente.
Just have a question. Is there a stop sign at Anthony and Albemarle, or is that not? I know it's not in the picture, but I can't remember.
There's one over.
I don't think that.
No, I'm just wondering if that's the same. You know, there's a lot of rolling of everything they think that goes through this neighborhood because people are trying to cut through, you know, from Lowell Street to Mass Ave, and they, you know, folks that are familiar with the area just zigzag. You know, I just feel like this entire area is very cut through traffic, and there's not a lot of controls, and I'm not saying we have to obviously decide that it's not in the agenda, but I think we should look at all those potential stop areas to make sure that we don't have more rolling, because same problem in my view, people just continuing on their path like they're on a speedway. Thank you.
Right.
Yeah,
and
we can certainly do that.
Right. Also, for my colleagues, I want to remind them that there are a number of locations in town, and TSG works on prioritizing and bringing them back to us. So while we can raise questions, I trust staff to sort through those requests and bring us in a timely fashion those that can be acted on. Seeing no other comments, any members of the public? Seeing nobody online, nobody in the room, I will move in accordance with the provisions of Chapter 689 of the 1986 General Laws, the traffic rules and orders of Lexington adopted by the Board of Selectmen on November 13, 1967, now Chapter 192 of the Code of Lexington, are hereby amended by adding the following to Section 192-10, Schedule 7, stop signs and yield signs. The street Anthony Road, location at Lillian Road, regulations stop. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed say nay. None. It is unanimous, 5-0. Thank you, Ms. Page.
Thank you.
All right. We are now at item number 5, which is the item on the annual town meeting.
Mr. Tatte, I'm just wondering if I might be able to take item 6 out of order as they're waiting in the audience. And I don't know how long we're going to be with number 5.
Oh, you're right. So if my colleagues are amenable, we'll reorder to take item number 6. This is to request to approve a plaque on the base of the tree at Buckman Tavern Grounds in commemoration of the Semiquincentennial. And we have with us Cindy Woolworth, the treasurer of the Lexington chapter of the Daughters of the American Revolution. And
Marginette de Magistris.
I'm going to ask you to say that into the microphone for me, please.
Hi, I'm Marginette.
You need to press so the light comes on. There you go.
I'm Marginette de Magistris. I'm a chapter member assisting Cindy Woolworth on this proposal.
Thank you.
Right, so I'd just like to say a very short statement. That's just a summary. We're members of the Lexington chapter of the Daughters of the American Revolution, And in last year in April, we came before you and you approved a tree. So we planted the tree behind Buckman Tavern, an American elm. And now we're here to ask permission to place a plaque at the base of the tree, and the plaque will commemorate the Semiquincentennial. So the materials you've already received from Monuments and Memorials have all the details. So I'm not gonna really say any more about that, just that we've been working with the different town committees and with the DPW, and we've listened to all their feedback and tried to incorporate it. And now we hope that if this gets approved, we will have a public dedication ceremony on Patriots Day next year. So other than that, I'd just like to say thanks to Monuments and Memorials for helping us with this whole process. And thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. And thank you for the offer of the plaque. Colleagues, any questions? Ms. Barry?
It's not a question. I just want to thank you for your patience in working through this process. And I'm looking forward to, being there for the dedication next year. Thank you for all that the chapter is doing and helping us support Lex 250.
Mr. Vicente.
Thank you. This is great. I was wondering if do you have specifics on the times of the ceremony?
We think it's good. Oh, the time of day.
No, okay.
Not yet. We are working with the Lex 250 committee to we're very flexible on timing. We haven't gotten to that step yet, but it should be on that Saturday, the 19th of April.
Looking for the Saturday. That was my more important question.
That's the
just
goal.
Wanted to see if we had consensus on that yet. A lot of things are still slightly in motion, so that's great. I support this. This is great, and yes, thank you for working through the Monuments and Memorials Committee process. It's a comprehensive process, but it does get a
yes. It was very good to get all the feedback, and we think it's better having done that.
Yes,
they do a great job for sure.
Yes, thank you.
Seeing no other comments from the board, I open this to public comment. Online, please raise your hand using Zoom. In the meeting room, please approach the microphone and we'll recognize in the room.
Dawn McKenna, 9 Hancock Street. And I completely support what you're doing and am appreciative of the efforts. I just rose to make a point because with this precedent, people are going to be coming to the board and to DPW about other opportunities for trees. And I just want to remind the board that as part of the Battle Green Master Plan, we aren't supposed to be putting trees in this area and aren't supposed to be naming trees in this area unless they have a direct connection to the revolution. I think DPW, who I have a lot of respect for, has gotten pushed on several opportunities in the past. And I hope the board will send a clear message that while this is completely appropriate, given the direct connection, that we should not be looking to the Battle Green and the Battle Green Master Plan area as a place to add additional trees, especially with commemorations on them. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no one else standing or online, I will move to approve the request of the Lexington Daughters of the American Revolution to place a plaque as proposed at the base of the Lex 250 commemorative tree located at the rear of Buckman Tavern.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed say nay. None. It is 5-0 unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
All right, it is just about 8 o'clock, so let's take a 5-minute break and resume at 8 o'clock. We are in recess.
Wow.
That's the meeting standing.
Yeah, that would be good. My back is stiff.
All right.
You agreed to that.
It is a few seconds to 8 o'clock, so I bring us back to order. And we will come back to item number 5, which is the 2024 annual town meeting. This is board discussion. We have a few items here. One is Mr. Lucente had raised some comments about Indigenous Peoples Day, which is Article 45, and the board's intention around that, not specifically to what town meeting will do, but for us to be able to articulate to town meeting our what we might do with regard to the current naming of Columbus Day and potentially adjusting that, since the motion at town meeting is simply to add recognition of Indigenous Peoples Day. But Mr. Lucente, I'm not sure if you're ready for tonight.
So it's amazing how Wednesday to Monday is a really surprisingly short period of time, and I did not have a chance to do. I have some research. Mr. Sandine had asked, let's not reinvent the wheel. Others have done it. I would like to provide a memo to the rest of the board with the details of what I found and the justification around us having a change from calling it Columbus Day to some other name that recognizes Italian American heritage. But I will be bringing that forth hopefully before our next meeting.
All right, thank you. So that was quick. I'm sorry?
I was just saying, what night is it due to come out? I was looking for a primary striker.
I don't have it in front of me, but it wasn't the first night.
No, it's not. At the end?
Somewhere in the middle, I thought, but we'll check on that and come back.
What's your panel?
Ms. Axel.
Monday, April 29th.
All right, so we have Mr.
What?
You have an extra week.
But in the words of our deputy town manager, that's not far away. That's very soon.
Right.
So get it done. That's what I heard from her, they're loud and clear today. So I will get it done well before that.
Good, I'm looking forward to that. So the next item that I put on my list here to make sure we talked about was Article 29 on noise, which is being addressed Monday night. And we have 4 waits. I'm just curious if the board needs any information before the meeting. There will be an information session tomorrow night for town meeting members, and that item will be there. But I do want to make sure everybody is aware they're going to have to make a decision a week from tonight.
The Sustainable Lexington Committee is also having a special meeting tomorrow at 6 to discuss both this and the amendments under the fossil fuel-free bylaw language change suggested by DOER. It's geared to be just from 6 to 7, but they will also be discussing in particular the delay issue. So we'll have more information from them and their recommendation after that.
All right, thank you. Which means the board will be able to hear from you at the hour before town meeting begins next Monday. Mr. Sandy, were you raising some mind?
No, I was just going to say I was planning to wait until hearing the debates.
All right, and that is fine. It just
I think the quandary, if I put myself in Mr. Pato's shoes for a moment, this is a select board requested change. So I think it does come across as a little awkward if we're all waits and, but because we're the ones that put it forward. I know, specifically for the delaying the gas leaf blower item, that one, I've heard personally a lot of feedback from members of the landscaping community. I've probably talked to at least 5 of them about the challenges that they've seen and how this would be a welcome opportunity for them to give time to actually implement what they're planning to do. It's been getting equipment I know others have had maybe other experiences but aren't landscapers who've made phone calls, but the reality for them is that they're struggling to get equipment in timely, and they need to be prepared. And some of this is not, oh, I can just go buy it tomorrow, because they're buying in bulk, large quantities, and it changes their business model pretty significantly. So anyway, that I'm obviously a yes on this, but I don't know if others were waiting to hear from members of the community or wanted to hear the debate or something else, but I would recommend talking to the landscapers, who are the ones that asked for this.
Thank you, Ms. Lucente. Ms. Hay?
So, Mr. Malloy, I have a question for you that will help me on this one as well. We have talked in the theoretical level at this point, I believe still, about the possible ability to consider, I think they're just called like basically the vacuum trucks for leaf collection, as another possibility in our means of, diverting compostable waste out of the garbage stream. And I believe also a possibility for creating some more income through our compost facility. Where are we in that process? Because it feels to me like that also could have an impact on how much continuing need there is for leaf blower work. And I want to make sure that we're not setting up our landscape small business, local businesses to make significant investments if that then will become less necessary work. I guess I want to understand a little bit more about what's happening and what that implication might be.
Yeah, so that is still in the planning stage. It's part of our stormwater management efforts to keep our costs under control. One of the things we can get credit for is if we pick up leaves that are in the street. And so a lot of communities, well, I won't say a lot because I'm only aware of a few in Massachusetts, communities in other states, I know I worked for one that did it, will actually, if people rake their leaves out to the road, then the town comes by and sucks them up. It's an expensive proposition because backhaul trucks require a lot of maintenance. You end up sucking up a lot of rocks that break things. And that's just from my own experience, because they're very expensive pieces of equipment and to repair them are very expensive. But DPW and town engineering is looking at it as part of our ongoing permits with the US EPA. And so as they continue to plan on that, that will come to fruition, but I would think that it's probably a couple of years down the road at this point in time.
And is it possible to get any sense of from other communities potentially who are using this, what impact that would have on the need of residential homeowners to have other work?
Somebody would still need to get it out to the street.
Right.
And so you still got that issue of getting it from all over your yard out to the street. And so there's probably still going to be a need for landscapers to be doing that unless people start doing it on their own.
I grew up doing that. we had the vacuum truck and we did just rake to the street, but fair enough. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And I'm away on that extension, in part because of the presentation we got essentially said it's obtainable, but with some sense of if you try to put in a large order right now, it might take a while to get it. And I wanted to hear that fleshed out a little bit more, because if it truly was obtainable and DPW needs to go do this as well, then I'm disinclined to extend. But if it is unreasonable at this stage, then I'm willing to grant a year. And it just hasn't been clear. And I would really like a clearer statement from a uninvolved source. Right.
Yeah.
So,
Ms. Barry.
So Mr. Pato, to follow up on that, and I don't know if you call him an uninvolved source, and you said something about DPW. Mr. Pinsino is on the line. Is it possible to ask him what his experience has been, Mr. Malloy, with acquiring equipment?
I know that both Mr. Pinsino and Ms. Peard, our sustainability officer, have both been looking at this and both have found that there is an issue with obtaining equipment. And so Dave is firsthand knowledge. I'm saying it's secondhand just because I've heard it from the two of them.
Right, and if Mr. Pinsino was ready, I mean, he did speak to this to us a few weeks ago when we decided to put this on the warrant. And the question for me is just a clear statement that can be made to town meeting members for them to hear, so that they can make their decision, just like I'm sitting in this seat trying to make that decision, but with a clear statement of, you know, what's the challenge. And, you know, I'm perfectly willing to wait for next week. If Mr. Pinstone was ready tonight, we didn't tell him in advance. But it will be decided at town meeting a week from tonight. Mr. Pinstone.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, you're clear.
Okay, David Pinsono, Public Works Director. The problem that we have run into is that it's the number of blowers, batteries, chargers that we would need to purchase. Not that they, you know, you can go and pick up a few of them here and a few of them there. If you had the, you know, up to about 80 to 100 landscapers in town that all wanted one model because that's what they felt was the best, there will definitely be a supply chain issue in order to get the units and the batteries and the chargers in a timely manner in order to meet that. We would also have that issue because although we have some of the electric blowers, we would have to switch all of our operations. So from highway to water sewer that uses them and hydrants and different things. So, so there would be a supply chain issue. That's what we're concerned about.
All right.
Mr. Tatte?
Ms. Barry?
On 29A, I'm a yes.
Ms. Barry is a yes on 29A, which is construction noise. Yes.
And just a point of clarification, I guess, from Ms. Axtell. I would assume the goal is to get our statements up on the website soon with as much of a position as you can say that we have.
Yes.
Okay. It's a little pressure for my colleagues.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, I have already edited that one, but I'm happy to edit it again to add more positions. All right.
I can be a yes on A.
Good. All right. I think we're done on that one. 31. Sandy, are we ready to do 31? Sure. Yeah, that was not.
So my question for Ms. Axtell, she had mentioned last time that there was going to be some outreach to the proponent and possibly some additional information coming back. What's your take on that?
I have not heard back from the proponent.
Ms. Barry?
I think I can add that the Retailers Association, I believe, spoke with the Economic Development Director, and they also have some concerns about this article and we're looking for additional information as well and weren't able to get it.
Right, and I was looking for some sort of summary of the experience Concord had as they went through this.
And what date is this?
April 24th.
All right, we have a little more time. So
if I could suggest, Town Council Mina Macarios, as you know, is also the Town Council of Concord, and he was involved when Concord passed that. I know that they've gone through town managers since it was passed, so it would be 3 of them, I think. So it would be hard to for me to get direct experience, but our own town council might be actually worth talking to about that.
That would be very helpful, I think. Ms. Molly, if you could just pose that question and ask.
I will.
Thank you.
And the other question I would ask town council while is how similar is this particular motion to the Concord?
I can tell you it's exactly the same.
Okay, thank you.
So a question for my colleagues. I appreciate that this is a citizen's petition, but if it's not ready and the citizen is not responding to our requests for further information, are we comfortable advancing this at town meeting, even though at the moment it's scheduled a few weeks from now?
What do you mean comfortable advancing? Because
Well, comfortable, like,
those, like, well, we're all awake, right?
right. I mean, at what point do we just say there's not enough information here?
That's when we would vote no.
Yeah.
That's my point.
Right.
You know, because other people have had deadlines and they've been held to them. I'm just afraid that each town meeting we do, and I know I'm nitpicking here, we go down a slope with 1 or 2 articles of people that haven't gotten their information in on time, haven't responded to requests, and it's usually surrounding a citizen petition. And I think it takes a lot of our staff time to follow up on that. And I'm trying to be mindful of, you know, we want to present as much information as we can to town meeting ahead of time so they're informed. And they're not like, oh, did this happen yet? Did this happen yet?
Mr. Vicente?
I agree with the frustration, but I think at the same time, I think we either need to say yes or no based on what our feelings are on the, there's theoretically no requirement of anyone to do anything other than get people to sign the 10 signatures and then it goes in the warrant. I mean, if they don't want to cooperate after that, it's nothing we can do to force them. And if they don't want to do the work, to do the homework, to reach out to businesses, then that's, you know, that's, I think, something we all need to take into consideration and perhaps mention that in our comments to town meeting in our position, because town meeting will be curious about why are we waiting? Well, we're waiting for the information that was never provided. So I think if, as a write-up, that would be one of the comments I would add in there.
Right.
I'm not sure who's doing this article.
I just want to add that ultimately our responsibility is to look out for what's best for the community. And if a citizen's article comes forward that isn't as well fleshed out as it should be, but the motion is clear. The motion is the same as what was in Concord. It's legally, we'll wait for Mr. Macarios to give us back his feedback. But at that point, I think it's no longer the proponent's lack of due diligence that should stand in the way of us doing the right thing. It's for us to judge the motion on the table on its merits. Now, in our way I look at it, when I go to judge something, if there really isn't enough information, I don't feel like it's clear, then I might come to a no. But it isn't a given that it should be a no just because the proponent didn't do all the work they should have. So we'll wait on this one. And I think reflecting on Ms. Barry's comment about additional work for staff, I do want Mr. Malloy to ask town council for that information, but I'm not sure Ms. Axtell should be going way out of her way to keep pushing to get the information you've asked. And if it comes in, it comes in. Ms. Hay?
So I would second that. And as the person who is the presenter, I would say that should be reflected in our statement, please. And then the last thing is that I can put it out to Magic. Concord is part of Magic, and I will put the question out.
Thank you, Ms. Hay. Susanti?
When we're ready to move on, I was hoping we could go backwards to Article 25. The Pine Meadows Clubhouse renovation.
Sure, let's do that now.
I did my homework and I'm ready to be a yes on that one.
Very good. Unfortunately, I have not had time for my homework, so I'm still away with no prejudice, just need to spend some time on it.
I'm in the same category. I've just been doing other things lately.
Okay.
I will read it, I promise, tomorrow.
Ms. Axtell, do you remember if there's anything else that's on Monday night? I was trying to get those first and I didn't bring a list with me.
Have it. 32, 42, 29. And time permitting is 38, 39, and 41.
Okay, so it looks like everything from Monday night except 9 we're all settled on. And 29 we've got more, which is helpful. Thank you.
And I'm still await on the zoning articles because I'm still in the same category. I just have to find the time to read through them.
Okay. All right, and I have no changes to my Q8, so anybody else have any changes? Otherwise, we can move on.
I'm a yes on 51.
Ms. Barry, the yes on 51, which is the height for the overlay, the village overlay. All right, very good. Thank you. Ms. Axel, is there anything else we need to address?
I would like to just remind the board that there's a training session for the tablets and a run through for new staff that's running town meeting this year on Wednesday at 6:30 in Batten Hall. So if anyone would like to attend, we'd love to have you, as well as getting online to train on both sides. And then just a reminder that TMMA info session is in person at the Science Hall at LHS tomorrow night. And then it is on Thursday, it is virtual. And also it's set up as the select board presentations were set up, which is a Q&A. It's not a presentation style, it's Q&A. So just a reminder about those. Thank you.
Again, I just want to add for the training session, the tablets will be available for members. The tablets are preloaded with your password and account. Unless you've changed your password. If you've changed your password, we won't know what it is. So you need to be able to type it into the tablet, which you can. Should you forget your password, staff will be able to reset them that night. But you don't need to reset. And I do want to say that there was an accidental email that went to many, but not all town meeting members, that they should, here is a link for you to reset your password. That was not intended. There was a software change and configuration change, and that actually triggered a shutdown of the mail system for a day because it sent too many messages all at once. For town meeting members who are watching, you don't need to change your password unless you want to. The ones we've issued you are not very friendly, but they were issued that way because they were put onto the tablets and we didn't want people easily getting access. But looking forward to seeing you all on Wednesday night. And Ms. Caxton?
One other thing, just to reiterate, position statements are coming towards you fast and furious. Please send them back to me as soon as you're able. Thank you.
Very good. So now we're done with item number 5, town meeting. We've already done number 6, so we're at number 7, an update on the participatory budget process. And Mr. Lipsey will be with us to give us a rundown. Mr. Lipsey?
Tatte, is he in the room?
No, he's not. Is he online?
I don't find him yet.
Mr. Malloy, if you could go ahead.
I could run through it because I've met with them a couple of times on what's going on. So we have 3 remaining projects. We have the RRFBs at crosswalks along the bike path for $250,000. We have the conservation land improvements for $100,000. And then we have benches for $70,000. So the engineering department has been working with Tech Inc. to do the RRFBs, which, we always use acronyms like that, but it's rectangular rapid flashing beacons along the unsignalized intersections along the bikeway. There are 8 roadway and 2 major driveway crossings. What they're doing is they're developing some mapping right now. They're also working on ranking all of the intersections of the 10 intersections from the most dangerous to the least dangerous, because while there's $250,000, that may not cover the entire 10 intersections. So if we can only do 8, we want to do the 8 most dangerous intersections and not the safest intersections. They are actually meeting with the Bicycle Advisory Committee, and that's on March 14th, so later this week. So within a week or 2, we'll have a better idea of what that ranking is. And we're looking at doing it this spring. And the engineering department will come back to the select board prior to putting it out to bid so that the board is aware which of the intersections will actually be done, and we can talk about how those will be designed and how they'll look at that point in time. The second one is conservation land improvements. We did, like I said, give $100,000 for that. The Conservation Commission has, and their staff have contracted to look at meadow preservation and management activities, including removal of invasive species and native plant restoration on about 20 acres on different properties that the town owns, that the Conservation Commission manages. They are planning on doing work in the fall of this year, or I'm sorry, they're getting the Conservation Commission to do the NOIs for the wetland protection permits this spring, and then looking to do the work in the summer and fall of this year. And then the last one are the benches. The DPW is in the process of obtaining quotes for the bike racks and benches, and will purchase and install those in the next few months. Oh, my computer just changed to a completely different. Just popped into Adobe PDF for some reason. Anyway, so they've also purchased some additional picnic tables that have been ordered already and have been delivered that they will begin placing around the community. And we did have a dog park, and as we all know, it's been withdrawn because we didn't have a adequate space to put it. It's pretty sad.
Thank you, Mr. Malloy. So colleagues, any questions or comments from Mr. Malloy before I take public comment?
Speaking of dogs, when are we going to get a dog to come visit us?
Seeing none, and do you need a microphone?
I'm saying, seeing as we're talking about dogs, I was just asking when the select board would get a chance to meet the service dog.
The comfort dog.
Comfort
dog. So I'll say that's out of scope. So seeing no comments from the board, I'll take comments online and in person. If the member of the public could cut the microphone.
Don McKenna, 9 Hancock Street. I just want to ask when the board is going to actually take up approving the locations affirmatively. I know there was a presentation to the board. I've mentioned to each of you, one of the proposed locations is right in back of my house. And as you know, we've had a lot of disruption there. And I had reached out to Chief McLean and found out that in the last 5 years, there's been 2 accidents, which he couldn't even say that they were actually at the intersection. They were just the location points. So I think it's complete overkill. As Mr. Lucente said, it's already like a movie set there. The last thing I need is a flashing light going off every 5 seconds when people go through that intersection. So I want to have an opportunity to have the board discuss that. I did send comments to Sheila Page after that presentation. I did not hear anything back, but I did hear from Mr. Livesey what I read in the paper today, that they're proceeding with design. And I don't think the board has even discussed the locations. And I'm sure I'm not the only one who has an issue with any particular location. So I do think this should be on a selectman agenda to ensure that the locations that are being proposed, just because we have the money available doesn't mean that every intersection needs to have one of these flashing beacons. And so I hope the board will affirmatively ask for the location specifically to be presented and to rule on them specifically with the appropriate data. And I'm glad to hear that the town manager is working on getting them ranked. But I can tell you this intersection in particular does not need a flashing light. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McKenna. And Mr. Malloy, I believe you said that you were getting the report back from the consultant and working with the Bicycle Advisory Committee this coming week, and that we should be able to have this
in the coming weeks.
Right. So yes, during the town meeting season, this will be an item before town meeting.
Yeah.
All right. Seeing no other comments and nothing from the board, we will move on. Thank you for the update. It is helpful to know where we are on this spending. Item number 8 is on our agenda to approve an expenditure of funds for a gift of cash received for sewer line repairs. Mr. Malloy is going to describe this to us and some adjustments that need to be made.
Yes, so we had a meeting this morning. I've been trying to work with Takeda and our sewer department and public works department to make sure that this continues moving in the right direction. And the meeting this morning, Takeda indicated that they would not be able to provide the town with gift funds because the project has been approved through their organization as a construction repair job. Gifts and donations are in a whole different area of the company, and so they can't do it this way. And so I'm going to ask the board not vote on this evening. We're looking at two different options. One would be for the town to oversee the work and Takeda to pay the contractors directly. And the other option, and I will have this figured out by the end of this week, because this was just this morning and I had meetings all day long, so I had a hard time trying to get something moving on this. The other option would be to have a special town meeting within the annual town meeting. It takes 2 weeks' notice to do that, and actually do it as a town meeting vote. The one reason why we might need to go that route is because the Public Works Department had already paid a couple of the bills, and the only mechanism we have to appropriately make an accounting adjustment is if it's all internal through an account set up. There's no way we could have them reimburse our Public Works Department. So it'll depend on some of how that might be able to be worked out over this course of this week. And so by next Monday night, I will have a recommendation of the board either to go one way by setting a special town meeting action, or if we go the other way, it really won't require any action on the select board's part or the town meeting's part.
Thank you, Mr. Malloy. And just to be clear, there is no change here on Takeda's intent to provide these funds. It's all how is it being channeled into the town and how do we appropriate it. And we will do what needs to be done.
Exactly.
Mr. Sandin?
Not directly related to the funding of this, I just wanted to ask about the status of the repairs and what the town engineers feel about this. I know this is a second water main break, and if we feel like it's resolved now, or there's potential for additional issues in the future.
So it hasn't been repaired yet. The engineering work is still being done on it right now by Weston and Sampson. There is potential for it to break again, and it's a sewer line, not a water line. And so it has a bigger, and it's near a wetland, so it has a bigger potential for doing damage to wetlands. And so it's one of the reasons why we're trying to move on it as quickly as we are and doing it as an emergency repair. It's on Takeda's property. It comes into our system. One of our big concerns, of course, always is when you have a porous sewer line, you not only have sewage that may come out of it, but you have inflow and infiltration into the sewer line. And then we're paying the MWRA to dispose of surface water that gets into our sewer lines. And really, this is a 1959 sewer line. It's asbestos concrete AC pipe, which is notorious for just crumbling after a period of time. And so, one of the concerns I've heard as well, we're going to have to do this all the time. And really, now that we use PVC style pipe, that pipe will last hundreds of years, as opposed to some of this more brittle pipe that once you get a frost heave, it just cracks. And then you have these major problems. So getting this out of the ground is a good thing for us too. That's one of the other reasons why we're willing to sort of work with Takeda and get this done. And they've been very appreciative of it and how we're working together. So it's moving along nicely. They're not reneging on anything. It's just that as Mr. Tatte said, we just need to figure out the best mechanism financially to handle the work.
Thank you, Mr. Malloy. So colleagues, there is no motion tonight, and that brings us to the end of that item, which brings us to the end of the meeting. Our next regularly scheduled meeting is on Monday, March 18th at 6 p.m. via hybrid participation. This is our first in the town meeting season. We will then be meeting every night that town meeting meets at 6 p.m. is our expectation, unless it turns out we have nothing, in which case we will cancel the meeting with notice. With that, I move that we adjourn tonight.
Second.
So moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. None. It is 5-0, and we are adjourned.